and it's being recorded, and it is just now being recorded. And this recording will be placed on the project webpage within a few days if you'd like to go back and review it, or if you have friends who've missed the meeting and would like to hear it. All participants will be muted except for the presenter. If you have any questions about using Zoom, please try to use the chat and we will provide help. Other questions about the project can also be placed on the chat. But we do have a lot of information to present this evening. So these questions may need to be answered later, and we can place those answers on the webpage. Or you can also email questions or comments to balmvision@austintexas.gov. This presentation is being translated in Spanish. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Susana Pimiento to explain how to access the Spanish translation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, the organizers, for making this a multilingual event. There is interpretation. If you're on your computer, you can see the globe icon at the bottom of your screen. You can click it and choose your language. If you're joining us from your cell phone or your tablet, then you can go to more, or the three little dots, find language interpretation, select your language and press done. Gracias a los organizadores por hacer de este un evento multilingüe. Vamos a estar interpretando. Si están en sus computadores, pueden hacer clic en el icono del mundo en la parte de abajo de su pantalla y seleccionar su idioma. Si nos acompañan desde sus tabletas o sus teléfonos móviles, pueden ir a los 3 puntitos o más. Allí van a encontrar interpretación de idiomas, seleccionan su idioma y presionan listo o finalizar. Y si tienen algún problema con la interpretación, por favor, nos lo dejan saber en el chat y trataremos de ayudarles. Muchas gracias. So if you have any problem with interpretation, please let us know in the chat and we will try to help you. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Susana. If you can go to the next slide. So quickly, what's the purpose of a park vision plan and why do we go through this process? The park vision plan really creates a roadmap or a framework for the development of a park. The process creates a park concept and a report that provides a detailed study of the park site. It determines appropriate park amenities and programming for the site. And it also allows the Parks and Recreation Department to connect with and provide a voice for the community that will be using the park in the future. The vision plan will also provide strategies for future funding for building the park by providing manageable projects for public funding like park bonds or parkland dedication fees, or for private funding through grants, for example. And we can jump to the next slide, please. And this is a big team effort. So I wanted to introduce some of the Parks and Recreation Department staff working on this project. That includes Adrian O'Keefe, a community engagement specialist with our team, and Rachel Morris, a landscape architect with the Park Planning Division of the Parks and Recreation Department. And we also have, who's not listed here, Justin Schneider, with the Community Engagement Office also helping out tonight. The consultant planning team is contracted by the Parks and Recreation Department and is being led by HAF Associates, and Aaron Cooper with HAF has been managing the project. And I'm now going to turn it over to Aaron to introduce the rest of the planning team and take us through the rest of the presentation this evening.
All right, thank you, Charles. Again, my name is Aaron Cooper. I'm with HAF Associates. We are working on the Bolm District Park Vision Plan, and we're getting close to the end. So with me, I have Brandon Hay. He's one of our urban designers at HAF. We've also got civic collaboration on the team. That's Diane Miller. She's the president. And we also have Language Access Austin, who you're probably listening to right now. We have Susana Pimiento and Azucena Garza. So I'm going to be pretty quick going through these slides because we are on slide 5 of 89, and I've only got you until 7:30. So let's go at it. All right. So for the whole process, we're getting kind of close to the end of the vision plan process. So we've had 2 previous rounds of community engagements. You may have seen postcard mailers, e-notifications, updates to the project website. You may have participated in surveys, previous virtual community meetings just like this one, and then also in-person pop-up engagement events. So through all of those means and methods, we've been gathering information and feedback about the concept. And so this kind of draft final concept is where we've landed tonight. But anyways, this 3rd round of community engagement, there will be a survey associated with it. It will be open through at least mid-June. We'll probably post that closing date on the project website. So that by July, we'll have a couple tweaks to the concept plan. We'll take that to the Parks and Recreation Board for review. And then in August, we'll be turning over a final vision plan report document. All right, so this conceptual plan development, in order to properly develop it, we have to meet not only goals of the city of Austin and the Parks and Rec department, like the long range plan, specific PARD programming needs, like maybe sports fields. You also have to meet the goals of staff, the maintenance operations, and then other city plans and reports, like the Trails Master Plan that are associated with that. It needs to be compatible with site conditions. So we need to create a concept that is sensitive to environmental constraints and the surrounding uses. And we also need to consider feedback from all of the respondents, not just nearby residents, but also community groups and special interest groups. And then lastly, this does need to meet city code and criteria set by all the various City of Austin departments. So the purpose of today's meeting is really to inform the community about the process, which we went through, and also the engagement efforts. And the real meat of it is that we will be sharing the results of community engagement round 1 and 2. And through community engagement round 1 and 2, we developed the draft final conceptual plan. We also want to encourage you to participate in an online survey. There will be a slide at the end of this presentation for that, and share the next steps. So briefly, what is a district park? It's approximately 30 to 200 acres in size. That's just approximate. They are located on arterial roadways, so they are easy to access. They typically serve the community within 2 miles. They do serve the adjacent neighborhoods with typical features that you would see in a neighborhood park, but they also play a larger role in preservation and creating space for nature. I do want to be careful to point out that this park has not been identified to include either a pool nor a recreation center. There are separate studies from this process that would identify where those are needed. And Bolm District Park has not been identified to include that. All right, so if you're not familiar with where Bolm District Park is, it's the pink shape in the center of this image. It is directly adjacent to 183. The left side of the screen, you can see Interstate 35 headed from top to bottom. And on the right side of the screen, you can see the 130 toll road. The park is on the banks of the Colorado River and is approximately 58 acres in size. A little quick history on the site. The site around 1964 was used for agricultural purposes. To the south of that left half of the image, You can see that there is a lot of disturbance, so no vegetation, and that was a aggregate operation, collecting and sorting and moving gravel and soils. By 2003, that operation had expanded to occupy most of our project site. One interesting feature about these two images is to the bottom right of that highlighted park shape, there's a bridge that crosses the Colorado River. Today, that bridge is gone, as well as the aggregate operation, but there are several things happening on site. The first thing I want to point out is the gas line and gas easement that bisects the site. It's that dark blue line from north to south. There are aggregate spoils piles all throughout the park from the previous aggregate operation. And then there is the future central maintenance complex that has been identified to be on this site. That was identified by a separate study. We do not have control over where that site goes, but there are opportunities to enhance both the central maintenance complex and the park through their relationship. One of those opportunities would be sharing the entry to the central maintenance complex and potentially sharing parking. If there are after hours, you could use the parking for the central maintenance complex as after hours parking for the park. So this is what the park looks like today. It's a mix of natural ecosystems and also highly disturbed areas from the aggregate operation. You can see lots of concrete and abandoned buildings and also the really pretty Colorado River. The vegetation, the left half of this image, with green, the dark green is your existing tree canopy. The light green are grassy areas, and then the areas with no color is no vegetation. The right image on this screen is showing the floodplain. So we do have the existing 100-year floodplain, and that means that every year there's a 1% chance that floodwaters will reach this elevation. There are some dark blue lines on that image that indicate the flow of water. So when rain falls onto the site, it collects and travels along these blue lines. And then towards the bottom of this image, there's a light blue highlighted area. That light blue indicates an erosion hazard. And that means that you have disturbed soils that have no vegetation and a flow line going through it. So there's the potential that soil can travel off-site through this. We wanted to talk briefly about connectivity. The blue lines on this image are existing trails. There are 10-foot wide concrete shared use paths adjacent to 183. The north end of this image from the top, there's the Southern Walnut Creek Trail. And then there's an orange line that is adjacent to the Colorado River. And this is not existing, but it is a long-range plan for the city of Austin to have a trail adjacent to the Colorado River. There's some concentric circles on this image as well, indicating how far one could walk within 15 to 30 minutes. And that's pretty generous. Most people can cover more ground than that. We spoke with stakeholders at the beginning of this process to develop community values. I'm not going to go over these. We have presented them before, and this presentation will be online, but to save some time, we always want to point back to these values with every decision that we make about the park. So we've been holding these in mind and making sure that we're not disregarding them. In the previous rounds, we've asked the community if they would prefer to see active, passive, natural, or cultural activities and programming. So we also pointed out activities within each of these categories. So we had 5 very important questions where we asked you to rank these categories of active, passive, natural, and culture. So rank them 1 through 4. And then we had you rank each activity within those categories. And what we ended up with was a prioritized list. So this list is not, the space that needs to be taken up by a particular activity, but it is the order in which we need to try to fit these activities into the park. The good news is that it's an enormous site and we're able to fit these activities in. But this helps us prioritize at which point these may be constructed in the future. So this was the prioritization list from the first round of community feedback. During the second round of community feedback, we showed 2 separate concepts and then asked everyone to rank the importance of the amenities to be included. And we ended up with this list. So concept A is on the left and concept B is on the right. I'm going to highlight these in smaller sections because I know this is a lot to digest. The first 5 items on this prioritization list are largely the same. They're in slightly different order, but they are all within 2 spaces of each other. So this tells us that the community for both concepts is very keen on seeing these as their top 5. 6 through 10 is identical. So that was really, really nice to see that we're running in the right direction with our concepts. And 11 through 27, we're not going to go through these individually, but they are also within 1 to 2 spaces, except for rain collection and fishing. Those have moved around. The city of Austin recently adopted in order to make sure that all future parks can be sites rated or sites sustainability rated. This is a ranking system similar to LEED, which you may be familiar with when it comes to buildings. But sites helps whole projects, including buildings, reduce water demand, filter runoff, provide habitat and biodiversity, reduce energy consumption, and improve air quality. So these are all great environmental concerns to keep in mind. So all City of Austin projects need to be sites certified silver or higher. So we won't be showing anything that will be impossible to achieve sites silver. All right, we've got 38 minutes and we're on to the concept plan, so I'll be quick. So this is it. I realize this is much too small a font to appreciate, so we're going to highlight this one section at a time. There are 5 main categories, or five main areas that the park kind of roughly fits into. Those are sports, the cycle zone, nature interaction, active play, and passive play. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the site itself so that you know why things may be arranged the way they are. So I'll remind you, the future central maintenance complex will be here. It's approximately 14 acres. We will be sharing an entry with that development. There is staff parking that could be available for after hours use. And we do have the gas line bisecting the site. So including the central maintenance complex access point, we do have one additional access point to 183. And this is the limit of our vehicular access. We would have a roadway going through the park, connecting those two access points, and one road that goes east into the park towards the Colorado River with that roundabout on the end. Parking would be located all along this. We have over 400 parking stalls. I think it's 450 approximately. This southern access point could have a key entry feature. Something that as people are driving by on 183, they see it and they go, that's Bolm District Park. I know where I am. There'd be an entry plaza from that shared parking area from the central maintenance complex going into the park. So it could have a shaded area, it could have signage, sort of a welcoming, a gateway type plaza. And then there would be a large berm separating the park from 183, trying to reduce the highway noise. The trucks are very loud when they're going by there with their tires. For connectivity, and to want to point out again, there's that shared use path along 183, and there's the future trail along the Colorado River. We have a paved hike and bike trail loop in our park. It's approximately 1 mile in length. We're connecting to that existing shared use path, and we will provide connections to the future trail along the Colorado River. And we're also considering other connections, like a trail along the gas easement to connect to the neighborhoods and to the Southern Walnut Creek Trail. All the other trails within the park combined, we have over 3 miles of trails. All right, so back to these 5 main areas. We're going to go through these one at a time, starting with sports. There are 2 large sports fields, kind of anchoring the park in the center. Those sports fields are not dedicated specifically to one sport, but they may accommodate soccer, football, cross, rugby, baseball. We are providing 4 pickleball courts to the north of the sports fields and 4 tennis courts. There will be a social games area that's horseshoes, washers, bocce, cornhole, those types of activities. There'll be 2 full court basketball courts, 2 sand volleyball courts, and a multi-use court that caters to multiple uses. Typical multi-use sports would cater to basketball, tennis, pickleball, shuffleboard, but maybe also things like field hockey, or even could be a place for roller derby to practice. The second area is our active play area, and we'll go through this one item at a time. There will be a plaza, pavilion, and restroom that connects the sports hub to the active play area. There will be a large playground area. This is about 15,000 square feet. Here's a rendering of what that could look like. We give it an industrial theme. We can theme the whole park as if it's sort of, these industrial remnants from the aggregate operation. And we haven't designed this. This is just a conceptual rendering. There will be a splash pad, about 1,000 square feet of splash pad. That's larger than any other splash pad in the City of Austin Parks Department. There'd be a nature play area, and what differentiates nature play from playgrounds is that it's typically more natural elements. You may use logs and tree stumps and rocks. It's an illustration of what that could look like. There'll also be an adventure play area. An adventure encourages creativity and building and manipulating the environment. For the passive play area, it does share some features with the active play area. One of which is the observation deck. This would utilize existing concrete piers on site to create a long elevated walkway. And there'd also be kind of an observation tower or silo. And here is that previous rendering you saw, but you can see in the background that there's a long elevated deck. And then also this central silo. And that's themed after the silos you would see in a concrete plant that used to be on this site. Could be incorporated into the playground, the slide coming out of it, be a great branding opportunity, and be a great point for observation. There'd be a central restroom and concessions using the existing building on site. And don't forget, there was the restroom over by the sports courts and playground. There's also a restroom at the south end of the site by the turnaround in the road. That existing building on site, I'll go back to the previous slide. And this is the existing building on site, but it could be repurposed to be the restroom and concessions. That observation deck could extend across the top of it. It'd be a great point overlooking the Great Lawn, which we'll get to. Could be an art garden. This can be a formal pathway with art and sculptures around it. That's not to say that art can't be incorporated throughout the park. This is the Great Lawn that I was speaking about earlier. This would be open space for a free and unprogrammed play. It's a place to go play frisbee, throw the ball, kick a soccer ball back and forth, fly a kite. Could also be a dog park and or off-leash area. It could have facilities, dog bowls, shade, maybe a station to hose down a dog. Be an outdoor classroom. And that could be a formal seating area, or it could be less formal. You might have benches and chairs in a row, or it could be a circle of limestone blocks like in the image on screen. This fourth area is our nature interaction area. It consists of nature trails. So there would be trails throughout part of the wooded area on site, as well as wildflower meadows. There'd be birding and nature viewing adjacent to the Colorado River. Birds will be attracted to water and food sources. There may be blinds, like the image bottom right, or there could be a deck with binoculars, like the top right image. This was ranked really high on the priorities list, was riverbank restoration. So there's 4 acres that would be between the trail and the existing edge of the Colorado River. There's some erosion, and that can be stabilized, and a natural ecosystem can be created or recreated. There would be a personal water sports access point. This would be a ramp that goes into the water, allows people to put canoes and kayaks in. This is the reason the driveway extends so far along the southern edge of the park, so that people don't have to carry canoes and kayaks for long distances. We're currently showing it 200 feet from the edge of the river, and there is parking. There's that vehicle drop off. There's lots of wildflower meadows. Pretty much any space that wasn't occupied or isn't currently occupied by tree canopy and isn't occupied by some other amenity is going to be filled with wildflowers, including that berm along 183. Fishing is naturally conducive to being on the Colorado River. So there's definitely the opportunity for fishing at the park. There's lots of kayak fisher people that will be utilizing the kayak input. You can also potentially paddle to other parks, like Big and Little Weberville parks on the Colorado River, or from underneath 183. And the fifth and final area that we're going to run through is we're calling it the cycle zone. So this cycle zone, the bulk of it consists of 5 acres within that kind of red area. So that 5 acres includes a bike park. You're seeing similars feature to the railroad in Rogers, Arkansas. You're also going to see a progressive jump zone within that 5 acres. And that will have at least 3 different paths of varying levels of difficulty, sort of beginner, intermediate, expert kind of stuff. All throughout the park would be a mountain bike skills trail. So there would be all kinds of rideable features, rock gardens, teeter-totters, log piles. And those could have bypasses so that beginners don't have to commit to the feature. There'd also be a pump and jump track, and that's separated from that 5 acre bike park area. And then lastly, for bike facilities, there'd be a bike repair area. We realize that obviously there's bicycles being used at the park, but this is also connected to the greater trails network. So this caters to commuters and recreational riders. All right, there's also a skate park showing about a 1 acre skate park. A community garden. This needs to be accessible to vehicles for bringing materials and tools and equipment. There are pavilions all throughout the park of varying sizes. Some of the ones that I mentioned previously that are associated with restrooms or plazas may be larger, but there will also be smaller shelters with 1 picnic table or 2 picnic tables throughout the park. All of those roofs are opportunities to collect rainwater. We can harvest rainwater and then use it to irrigate. We can also capture runoff from parking lots and use vegetated bioswales. This image middle right is an illustration of a very attractive looking bioswale. And I'm going to call out a couple locations for public art, but public art can be incorporated into everything. It can be the main gateway feature here. There's a great opportunity for art along 183. You would get a lot of views. Of course, entry plazas are great opportunities. Skate park is an easy one, illustrated by this ramp that's at the downtown skate park. There's also the art garden, which we spoke of earlier. All right, I went through that a lot faster than I planned. So I want to remind y'all of the schedule. We are currently in community engagement round 3. We'll be wrapping that up by the end of June. In July, we'll be taking this plan and any edits that occur to the Parks and Recreation Board for their review. And then in August, we'll be delivering a final vision plan report. So to wrap up that 3rd round of community engagements, I need to request that everyone on this call take a survey and share it with at least one person. So it's very important for your feedback on every round of this project, including this 3rd round. We need your feedback to define those priorities and make sure that this plan is accurately responding to community engagement. You can scan the QR code where there is the URL. And then questions, of course, you can go to our project website at austintexas.gov/BolmPark, or you can email us at bolmvision@austintexas.gov. All right, I should have taken longer on those first slides.
No, it looks good. Thank you, Aaron. We do have a few questions in the chat. I think we can address those since we have a little bit of time here.
Yeah, let's shoot.
Yeah, several compliments. So it's a nice job, planning team on that. Is there a link to this presentation? And Justin did answer this, but for everyone not looking at the chat, this presentation will be posted on the web page in a few days with this recording. So please go back and review it if you need to. There's a lot of information in here, so please take your time in reviewing the plan and taking the survey. Does the 450 parking spots include the shared parking lot? Here's that 450, all the new, or the parking spaces within the park itself. Did you hear that, Aaron?
No, sorry, I think it was cutting out.
Okay. Yeah, they were asking if you mentioned 450 parking spaces. Are
Yes,
those are just within the park, or does that include the shared parking?
that's just within the park limits.
Okay.
There'd be, I don't recall how many parking stalls are within the the other development, but we are showing approximately 450 within what we have left.
Okay, great. Can you share the link to this survey that I can share in our HOODS Slack? Yes, it will be on the project webpage. There'll be a link to the survey. Is the project funded from a previous bond? Unfortunately, no. This would be for a bigger part of this development. It would be a future park bond. And right now we're hopefully looking at 2026 for our next park bond. So we'll have this vision plan in place, and it's really up to the community to talk to our bond committees and let them know how important this park is to you, and make sure it's part of that bond package. So please, even when this is finished, please keep this in mind for the bond election that should come up in 2026. Yes, and Justin posted the survey link in the chat. What's the estimated completion date? Well, that all depends on funding and future park bond elections. So it's difficult to say, but the next step in this process is to really help us phase the development of this park. And so there may be some light touches for phase one of this park. At the very least, right now it's vacant land, so we'd like to get it, to a point where people could actually use the park, and perhaps it's nature trails, and we need to clean up the park to make it safe for people to use and to get down to the river safely. So hopefully that's a phase one project that we can do relatively soon, within the next couple of years. But your feedback on this survey will help us in deciding which features of the park are developed first. Let's see. My question is about lighting. Living in the neighborhood next to the park, I'm concerned about the amount of light hitting the neighborhood after dark. That's definitely a valid concern. That's one reason we tried to keep the sports fields, which would generate most of the light, the open play fields and the courts. Those would have some sports lighting, but they're far enough away that you shouldn't notice them within Knollwood neighborhood.
I would also note that that
yeah,
existing tree canopy would remain.
yeah, exactly. And with this design, we tried to the design team tried to keep the things next to the neighborhood, next to the river, within the floodplain, a little less developed, a little lighter touch, whereas the more developed parts of the park are closer to the front along 183. Let's see, trying to jump through these quickly to look for questions. A couple of questions here from Garrett. What's being done to ensure the maintenance building is kept to the same design aesthetics so as not to be an eyesore? Well, and we actually do not have, this project does not have anything to do with the maintenance complex, and that's part of a bigger conversation that's happening, you know, with people who are above my pay grade, to be honest. And that has to do with the land swap that was part of a election a year or two ago, to swap some land with our old central maintenance complex. We would get some property um, along the river, just north of Bolm District Park. And along with that, the developer would build us this maintenance complex. But we do have a conceptual design for the maintenance complex, and it is the building is attractive. They are screening the interior parts of the maintenance complex with vegetation. So hopefully it will be screened enough to not be an eyesore. And also what's being done to slow traffic on 183. That's a great question. I know that's a very fast road, and that's certainly something, and when we get into the more detailed design of this project, that's certainly something we want to consider for the park, and consider for the entries and people exiting the park. So, and that's something we will have to work with TxDOT on. How do we slow down the traffic to make it safe? Yeah, a couple other comments about the traffic on the access road, and that's certainly something we're going to keep in mind. Can parking lots be pavers? Impervious pavers, I think is what they're asking, rather than concrete and asphalt. And I'll let you speak to that, Aaron.
Sure. Yeah, they could be. That would get us points for the site's sustainability rating. There is a high level of maintenance that does go along with pervious pavers. And they shouldn't be used in the floodplain area because they could get clogged with sediment. But that is certainly a possibility.
And I think that's something that will help us with our site's certification, right?
Correct.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
this
mean,
is, again, this is, where this is our first step in developing this park. And once there's funding, there's a lot more detailed design to go into this. So these ideas will be part of the vision plan report to help us meet those goals of sites. Very happy with the observation tower. Yeah, great job on that planning team. Yeah, I think it will be, if that could be realized, I think it would be a great view up and down the river. So, I mean, neat. Is there funding for phase one, or will that have to be a bond? There is no funding right now for development of this park. Funding for phase one could be a bond, or it could also be, if there's parkland dedication fees in the area, we could use those. Currently, I'm not aware of fees that are available for this park, but it's something that we will look at as the Parks Department. We'll keep that in mind. Any idea on ballpark of cost for all the phases? I think I'll let you answer that, Aaron. I think y'all are going to be working on that soon.
that is one of our next steps as we approach that submittal for August, is we will be developing a opinion of probable construction costs. Will include contingencies for construction and design. We'll also look at adjustments as time goes along.
Great. Another question about lighting. Can shielded dark sky friendly lighting be used?
Absolutely, it can. There's some pretty incredible lighting technology that we could use today. They have direct cutoff shields for sports lighting. So even those sports fields, the light doesn't encroach, it doesn't leave that field. There's some really impressive fixtures out there. Other lights throughout the park could be what we call it has a high bug rating, which bug stands for backlighting, uplighting, and glare. And that would be dark sky friendly kind of stuff.
Great, thank you. Michelle had a question about kind of general timeline if construction could begin in 2027. And Brandon is correct. I think that would be difficult because we do once a bond is passed, and it has funding, and there will be several projects that are part of that 2026 bond. So depending on where this one aligns, there is a design process and engineering that, and also permitting that typically takes at least a year for that process. And for a park like this, depending on how big phase one is, it could take longer, could be 18 months. And Brandon mentions that this opening by 2030 would be a win. But again, we're gonna always look for these earlier phase one improvements to help people get to the park. The maintenance complex and that parking may be something that's built beforehand, so we may have at least some vehicular access to the park. So hopefully we can do some earlier phase projects on Bolm District Park to at least let people get out to the park and use some trails and get down to the river. May not be a full build out, but hopefully we can get the park started. Yeah, CTR, and Brandon mentions to contact CTRMA for discussions about the 183 traffic. It's a good point, Brandon. What about the Rogue Lane Development Park fee? Yeah, I'm not sure about that one specifically, but yes, we will look into what parkland dedication fees might be available for this park. Patrick asked about having some of these features on the roof of the maintenance facility, general social area, community gardens, art installations. That may be difficult. And of course, nothing's impossible, but that's, it will be a maintenance facility and an office building for Parks and Recreation Department staff. So kind of mixing the maintenance facility with public use like that is the coordination of that is difficult. And, but I think we can always keep that in mind. I mean, right now we're conceptually dreaming big. Melissa mentions at the very least, a green roof. Yes, I think that would be awesome at the maintenance facility. But again, as this planning team doesn't have anything to do with that maintenance facility, but we'll certainly pass on comments to some of the PARD staff who are working on that. Colin asks what role does or could philanthropy play, like the Peace Park Conservancy has done. Certainly there are grants out there, and we always look for private funding. Austin Parks Foundation is always a good source for funding. The conservancy model is certainly possible. That takes many years to build something of that nature, but it's always a possibility. I think we have about 1 minute here, so let me see if there's perhaps one last question here. Brandon asked, would this be competing with Walter E. Long's ambitious plan for funding? Not necessarily directly. It wouldn't be a direct competition with Walter Long, but there are a lot of parks that need to be developed that would be part of this park bond program. So, we need to certainly look at spreading that money around. So, if you want to look at it as a competition, it's really competition throughout the city. But, I think this is a great plan. I think it's worthy for this area. So it can turn into a great park. And I think if you come out to speak to our bond committees in a couple of years, I think it can get some decent funding. And we are at 7:30. So I just want to emphasize again, that we really appreciate your participation in this process, and very important. Please take the survey. Please pass it on to friends and colleagues to take the survey. We do. Hopefully, this reflects that we do take these surveys seriously, and we are trying to build this park for the community, and y'all are as big a part of this planning team as myself or the designers on the team. So again, thank you very much, and hope everyone has a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.